Okay, so a little bit of introduction. This is the this is the working group for Radon. So far, we have done the working session for particulate matter, carbon dioxide, monoxide, ozone, formaldehyde, nitrogen dioxide, and now radon. So let me jump to the right slide. Radon. Okay, so this is an overview of all the available standards and guidelines I could find out there. I have shared the spreadsheet, if you remember well, during the survey, but I just put all the information in one slide in order to review a little bit what's happening in the rest of the world. In most of the cases, some of the standards out there, they don't specify on whether they have like a ceiling limit or they rely their values on some kind of an average hour. So for this reason, we have them under undefined. And as you can see, the minimum value in becquerels per cubic meter is 100 in most cases, and the maximum can go up to 400. So for this reason, and according also to WHO, at GoAQS, we are recommending adopting this value, 100 becquerels per cubic meter. And I would like to hear your thoughts on that. If someone disagrees, there was a comment saying that we should propose even stricter limit. So if someone has a comment on that, I would love to hear. Okay, no comments. Apparently you all agree. And then on another question that we asked during the survey was if some people considering that there is a safe level of radon, and fortunately, all agreed that there is no safe limit. Those were some of the comments that they were shared with us when we asked why there are so many different recommendations or action levels depending where you live. And in most cases, and I will share my personal experience about Greece, for example, where I am from, is that in many cases, the bodies that they are responsible for taking the decisions around setting some limits, they don't care. In Greece, for example, the European Union asked all state members to have set a limit by 2018, and the limit shouldn't be lower than 300 becquerels per cubic meter. And immediately Greece replied 300 per cubic meter, as that was the minimum that they could do. This is not the case for all countries. In some countries, they know that the problem is real, like especially those northern countries in Europe and Canada. That's the reason we have now two people from there. Does anyone would like to share their thoughts, or maybe you recognize your comment here and you would like to speak about it?
Does this also consider the duration of testing period? 48 hours versus, say, like in Canada, 90 days, or
Yeah, the Greek the Greek level of threshold is set per average year. So if you measure 300 becquerels and on an average. Yes, Pedro.
Yeah, thank you. I'm recognizing one of my comments here. I think it's the second one, because I think that some levels might be more related with risk assessment, and others might be more related with some, let's say, constraints or limitations in some specific areas or specific countries or specific regions within the country.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in Portugal, we had in the previous legislation for indoor air quality, we had radon. And at that time, radon was mandatory for some specific regions of the country that were radon prone areas. So basically, areas more in granitic soils and these things which are more prone. Now they have produced it with some delay, I would say a lot of delay, for, according to the EU directive. they have produced the Radon National Risk Map, which identify different areas, and they have now realized that these areas are not necessarily the administrative regions of the country, so things are quite different now. But there is also an issue, which is they have this 100 becquerel per cubic meter limit, or 200, I'm not sure, but they put like a margin of tolerance. So this is not very well seen by the people like me. I'm an academic, but also people in the field here, like from companies and so on. They also don't see this with good eyes, you know, having like a margin of tolerance if your building is in a in a in a radon prone area or something like that, because sometimes these levels are very, very difficult to reduce. That's why I also made this comment, because sometimes this difference might be because of these, you know, because in some specific areas, probably the governments or the local governments or the local authorities have put these, let's say, not so strict thresholds, because it is very, very difficult to meet these such strict
Hmm.
limits in those areas. But I mean, it's just a reason from what I see in, for example, in Portugal. Timing is also another important issue, because it's very tricky to make uh, the sums in Portugal. And I had this discussion with actually the Portuguese authority, Portuguese agency, environmental agency, which is the authority for radiation protection, and which accommodates also radon. Which, by the way, in the last years it changed, because we have a legislation for indoor air quality which considers radon, but in Portugal, radon is now in the environmental protection agency, while the indoor air quality is with the health national authority. So these two things are now a little bit disconnected. And in radon, we can see that there are a group of professionals working on radon sampling, because it is now mandatory from the EU directive. For example, it is mandatory to have a screening in every building, and they have, for example, divided this into screening phase, and then if the levels are higher than the threshold, then you have to do a long-term campaign. So answering to the topic of the time that was raised by Todd, this is an issue that occurs in Portugal, and something that I've seen also in the literature, which is the discussion of what should be the good timing for screening, and what should be the good timing for, let's say, a, a proper and complete monitoring. Another discussion that I have been with these people in Portugal is how to measure radon, because probably you know better than me that these let's say standardized methods or reference methods are mostly based on these passive samplers. But if we want to control it like near real time or in real time, we need to use these automatic and continuous monitors, which are
Hmm.
emerging in the market, and we have different instruments, and very, very good ones, very accurate ones. I have done some myself. I have some papers published also on them. So there is also this discussion, which I think it is important to bring to the table, because defining a specific target and without the time limit, it may be tricky. But we need to account that these days we have these tools also, that continuous monitors that can give us the values continuously. And if we want to make these guidelines also together with the other pollutants, maybe we have to think more about that, you know, like a threshold that we can consider, let's say, forever, and not wait
Hmm.
like 3 months and do the average.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing your opinion. From my yes, Christos, please.
Yes, I would second this approach. Maybe, you know, a couple of things, like I measured radon in Greece. A lot of countries, I measured it in a volcanic island. It makes quite a big difference, right? Where do you measure things? So also with respect to Greece, right, the building materials. I live in the States. I live in a house that has an actual ventilation system to remediate radon. So in the States, you have a whole industry built around 150. You cannot change that. it's like we're talking about the housing market here. It's like so strong, like anything, any change around that is nearly impossible, I would say. But again, they build with wood. They build completely different than in Greece, right? So that has to be taken into account. And also, like, we measured, like, right in like schools, and we found like really above like 250 becquerels with active monitors and passive as well. So the method also matters, especially for like looking like, long term, but also the technology is catching up, like it has been said, like, with a lower cost, like detection applicable. So yes.
What I don't understand with radon is, like, if we take a holistic approach of air quality and we look about ventilation inside buildings, then, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't we also remediate the problem of radon? Like, let's say if we are following ASHRAE's recommendation of ventilation according to 241, the latest standard that they have released, you don't also taking into consideration or removing radon from the indoor spaces just because you're bringing so much more air inside, or this is not the case?
No, it's from our experience. We have a lot of continuous monitoring devices deployed in buildings all around the world, and if you have high amounts of radon, it doesn't matter if you have enough air exchange, because there can be significant amounts leaking into the building, and the ventilation isn't able to manage that. And that's also why in buildings that even have, like, homes that have balanced ventilation and stuff like that, even the modern standards, you might have to introduce mitigation, subslab, depressurizations, and different solutions to remediate it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that clarifies the question that only ventilating with the HVAC system is not sufficient in order to remediate
Not
concentrations
always.
of radon. Yes. Okay. All right.
That's my feedback, at least. It seemed
no.
like the people were nodding. Yeah.
Well, this is
Yeah,
what I have
we
read also in
manufacture at Fantech HRVs, heat recovery ventilators, which do that, bring fresh air in and stale air out. Obviously, too, there's concerns with that on the amount of moisture maybe it's bringing in, or lack thereof in winter months. And so there's benefits and pluses, but there's also big minuses, and a lot of people don't even know how to use them, or they're dirty, or they're those are just some of the problems. Or smoke in the air, then now you're bringing some of that air in. But the rule, or we usually say, it generally reduces, or the research we've done, radon levels to about half. So let's say you have 200 becquerel, the HRV is running, you can get to about 100 becquerel. So that's generally what we throw around. Of course, that's going to vary, but similar to passive stacks are about the same.
Todd, if may I ask you a comment regarding Christos' comments, that in the US they have like 150 becquerels as a limit and they work around it. Do you think, like, if we propose 100, it's going to create issues for their industry and how they have used to working around that area?
I think because we have the weight of the WHO, that might be an okay reference to use 100. I think, even my comment of trying to be better and lower it, be below everybody, it might be the biggest challenge. Really, the duration is also maybe more important than the, they're 150, but they're also a 48-hour test, which is, in Canada, we make big jokes about that, but they're so real estate based that it works out because they test so many houses that they get lucky. So that's the theory behind that. But yeah, in Canada, we wouldn't even feel proper installing a mitigation if someone just said, I tested for 48 hours and I'm really, really high. We're like, oh, well, do a long-term 90 days, and then if you're still high, because it is a long-term average. So
right, because in Canada the regulation states like it has to be for 90 days, right? 3 months.
Winter season also is recommended by Health Canada. Heating season, of course, because you're going to get that stack effect. You're going to be drawing that soil gas up from the slab.
Okay.
I think I have seen some studies. Just a quick note about this.
Yes,
I
yes.
think I have seen. I think no. I'm sure I have seen some studies. I'm not finding them. I was trying to finding them here. That say that they have because of this timing and what is considered a good timing to be representative of the radon concentrations. Because usually people put like 90 days or 3 months as let's say a long-term measurements or an acceptable monitoring period. But I've seen some studies from I think Dusan Lycina group in Switzerland, if I'm not wrong, that they have found out that these with short term monitoring, like I'm not sure if 48 hours or 1 week would be, I think 1 week would be enough, so it would be representative. They have sampled a lot of houses and schools and stuff like that, if I'm not wrong. I've seen this paper a few years ago, like 1 year or 2 years ago. I will try to find it and share it with you, because I think it's really important for this discussion of the timing, because it says a lot. It's like you're saying, if you sample 48 hours, it may be different, but it may not be different. So it is something to have into account.
Thank you. And we have a next question, which is related to what we are talking about. How should we measure radon indoors on a long-term and after mitigation? How often should we retest buildings to ensure the systems in place are working efficiently? And again, there was a mention here about the 90 days period and the short-term testing, like of 2 to 7 days. And again, 90 days is like the predominant number if you would like to make sure that you don't have a problem with radon. Again, if you recognize your comment and if you would like to add something more, feel free. Yes, Todd.
I learned the reasoning behind the 90-day test from Health Canada was because it was based on a period of the average life expectancy of 71 years. So 90 days is also like a very short-term test if you use that 71 days. So that's the reasoning why I maybe wanted to share that with you guys.
Thank you. Those are some open comments that people shared during the survey. Let's read some of them. Obviously, radon gas is in class A carcinogenic. I remember using the term reference level instead of limit. Who said that? Do you recognize this comment? I would like to learn a little bit more about why they're mentioning that. And then I believe that just as important as establishing common limits and measurement procedures, efforts should be made to better define remediation solutions, especially those related to ventilation. There is a broad agreement on the solutions that can be used, but the calculation based for designing ventilation airflow rates are not clearly defined for any of the involved solution, subslabs, the pressurization, creation of overpressure, dilution through air renewal. That sounds like Todd. I'm saying. And also,
No.
Is it yours?
No.
No? Okay. In radon, the first comment says, in radon, it is important to discuss between passive monitoring, typically the reference methods with dosimeters, and continuous active real-time monitoring using recent automatic monitors. Another important aspect is the duration of measurements, as there are some studies in the literature concluding that monitoring periods can be reduced. This is coming from you, Pedro, I assume, right?
Yes, yes. I shared with you one of the studies in the chat box.
I copied the link. Thank you. All right. And now the question of $1 million again, which is the appropriate unit of measurement? WHO and the International Standard Organization, they're using becquerels per cubic meter, but only in the US and some other small countries, they're using becquerels per liter. Which one should we use? Communicate information with the public? Should we have both, or one is enough?
My opinion, always, I like the becquerel only because it is a lower number. For example, if you have 35 becquerel, that's really, really good. And if you have 35 picocuries, that's really not that good, but it still sounds low because it's only 35, but it just sounds like a greater of the two numbers for me. It's my silly opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 35 picocuries is definitely not good.
Personally, I prefer also becquerels than picocuries. But again, it's not what I say, but what the majority of people agrees, and based on the work that they have done. Does anyone know why in the US they use the picocures instead of becquerels?
Have to be different.
Madame Picocurie, I believe, is the reasoning behind it. She was the one who discovered radon, Madame Picocurie.
Christos, did you say something else? I didn't hear it.
I guess just to be different, like a lot of like the difference.
All right.
Have no actual reasoning. Sometimes.
You can say the same about the metrics in the imperial system, right?
In general,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, fantastic then. Should we, like, the US is a huge market when it comes also to radon. Do you think we should also, like, having a parenthesis and the conversion of the concentration of radon? It's easy, the conversion is not very complicated like with gases. Is that something that, for example, with your communication with colleagues in the US or in those countries that they use picocuries per liters, have you ever had any friction or any problems from their side
Yes.
understanding?
So I can comment from my side. I mean, our monitors are used again worldwide, and we had to introduce picocuries in our solution for the American customers to be able to select that as the preferred unit in the dashboards that we use. So from my experience, we might have to utilize both units, unfortunately.
All right.
But
I would say that for academics is not a problem.
Mhm.
That's what I would say. I mean, everyone uses Becquerel, mostly in publications also, but for more practitioners, I think it's useful to have both. But I would give an emphasis on Becquerel per cubic meter. I also prefer that.
Thank you. Okay. And basically, that's all today about radon. So to sum up, we are going to propose those 100 becquerels per cubic meter. I also take into consideration the comment from one of you that said that 150 is like the standard in the US and they will never change. We have some contacts in the US. I would like to run this information by them and see how flexible they are in their minds and see if we can go with, you know, WHO standards around the limit for radon. And finally, we will communicate mainly in becquerels per cubic meter, but again, if it's needed, I mean, it's easy to convert it. There is no problem there for the sake of making the public also aware of the different limits. Todd?
I was told in Canada originally we were 800 becquerel. We were excited when they moved it to 200. It was clearly not low enough, but we were just excited because of that. But also the literature that they're not going to just go out and run and produce a whole pile of literature, Health Canada, because all the cost of all the paperwork, it's already written to 150 becquerel. So when I heard that, I actually thought that that was probably a reasonable argument on why they won't change, is because they already have so much paperwork that reads 150. To change that obviously would be cost money. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all again for joining the session. I will try to resum, come with a conclusion and publish the video as well by next week in order to bring more people and more opinions into the matter. And after that, I'm going to update the white paper we have with some information from all of those working groups that I have been involved, and other people have been involved as well. And hopefully we are sprinting towards the end of the first version of the Go HUS with some standards that are gonna help everyone like stay safe in the indoor spaces. Thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you, Soterios.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great to see everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.